Super Symmetry News. Half a Time a Day. Dissertation, Episode 4. Introduction. Courtesy from Just Sit There and Fucking Listen. Human augmentation through technology, blending biology with cybernetics and artificial intelligence, has moved from science fiction to an active field of research. Advances in neuroscience and bioengineering enable new interfaces between the human body and machines, while AI offers powerful tools to interpret and enhance human cognitive functions. This report examines three provocative integration concepts. Quartz memory, aka Superman memory, devices, elemental magnetite clusters in the brain said to be naturally occurring, and blood-based cybernetic augmentation, iron and other elemental oxides. Enzymic electrochemical, electrolytic, saline, salt leaching osmosis and contamination through impurities with endopathology leading to gradual, cognitive and bodily decline. We assess the peer-reviewed scientific viability of these ideas through the lenses of neuroscience, bioengineering, and AI-driven human enhancement. You are encouraged to research about Blood Falls of the Antarctica and the connections to Golden Falls of Blessington Lakes and the Tartarian conspiracy. Mud flood and other paralleling factors of a recent unrecorded catastrophe. In line with the emergence of precursor to digital media being the newspaper, and the religious wars that have transpired simultaneously of metropolitan influx of population displacements and erosion of the indigenous tribes, that I have posited as connected to a Central Asian population displacement that occurred around 1600 BC, perhaps connected to early globalism that led to the Hyksos and Asiatic influence. Due to population displacements and nomadic sprawls. Such Hyksos are connected to Palestinians, who are connected to the Phoenicians, and Oceanic tribe connected to Numidians and thus Africanus, who ruled much of Lower Egypt during the 15th dynasty. You are encouraged to connect these actual events with the following report, especially in relation to blood oxides and elemental secretion through, namely, hydrogenesis. We explore this along with pseudoscientific and experimental methodologies emerging in biohacking communities, ranging from DIY implants to claimed psychical, mental or psychic enhancements. With the addition of military and paramilitary implementation, to understand speculative approaches and separated fact from fiction. We then propose a hypothesis of an active interim of human transcendence through machines, discussing how machine learning (ML), deep learning, and augmented reality (AR) might contribute to future biohybridization, and the hazards primary to the axiom of narrow, general, and super intelligence in AI programming, and the risks of gradients of such intelligence as artificial allowances. I speculate that AI is not artificial really, that it is a basis of mechanical process of the anatomy of life, as body plans. We hypothesize of how it may already be an implementation, through, predominantly, excreted and composited materials, needed and naturalized upon the brains and bodies as a synaptic cognition. Through electric effects and superconductive materials science, such as common elemental excretion, a leaching, a sapping, alchemic-induced plasticity. Such as this, worked through as a regenerated, emulated programming interim and architecture, via powerful terminal computing devices and ethereal, luminosity, nanostructured. Qubit framework emulated as a thought form subliminal conformity. Aligned through electromagnetics in memory states of controlled biotechnical sources eliciting a brain datum to subliminally orchestrated subsistent compliance. A biocircuitry, biocomputation pin net. Finally, we address potential technological breakthroughs required, ethical considerations of augmenting humans, and future applications. Providing case studies and a critical analysis of feasibility and scientific legitimacy throughout questionable ongoing experimentation. And special projects that can be extrapolated to determining the feasibility these special programs are currently involved of. Whilst speculating of the future prospects and dangers it poses for humanity and beyond. So, let's jump in the deep end. Here we go. Quartz memory and cybernetic integration, Superman memory, Quartz technology. Introducing this now will synchronize with your interpretation later. Quartz memory refers to a 5D optical data storage technology developed in nanostructured quartz glass. Famously nicknamed the Superman memory crystal, researchers at the University of Southampton demonstrated that femtosecond lasers can etch data into tiny nanostructured dots within fused quartz. A child of microdots in genetic tech, in this case, encoding information in 5 dimensions, 3 spatial coordinates, plus 2 optical parameters. The result is an extremely robust storage medium. A single small quartz disk can hold up to 360 terabytes of data and remain stable for billions of years, even under high temperatures. Later it will become evident of the synchronicities throughout this crash course of the emergence of all this tech, and the greater implications. Specific to processing speed and dynamic memory states, and the efficacy, desired result of elicitation techniques. That is permeated through the media as a new age propaganda parroting the same tune, whereby the association of biology to metric encoding is being actively acclimatized. In this context, this note is too appealing to hardliners staunch and stubborn and even bigoted to realizing the mutual benefits and the disastrous hazards. You'll recognize how this is a theme-based universality as a procedures of settings, protocols and parameters. I speculate the ultimate attempt is to eliciting auto-alignments and conscription through a garnered normative culture shock via a constant, linear bombardment. Through the digital media and technology that we are exposed of on a daily basis. I explore the conventional aspects called Internet of Things and the Quartz conspiracy. What is consistent with the advent of quantum supremacy and full-spectrum dominance through large and small-scale warfare applications and social codes of engineering. I strive such appeal to developing concepts explaining the hows, the whys, and the whens. And how this is all connected, whilst appealing to your intelligence and critical thinking. An example is that of Superman memory, that earned the moniker due to its resemblance to the memory crystals in Superman lore, and its unprecedented durability. Scientists have stored the entire human genome on one such quartz crystal, highlighting its immense capacity and longevity, as well as static potential anchorage of such linear longitudinal baseline reality and technology singularity, through mediums of elemental excretion upon all the brains. An immediate example then that concerns the neuroscience of dark energy, and the physics connection to dark matter, and alchemy of economic, cultural, political, spiritual, religious, social, and innovation, whilst warning of the factors pertaining to misplaced powers to existing, that is further exemplified of occultic themes such as satanic panic, telema, Realianist, Scientology, Celtic, Scandinavian, Asian, African, and others, as a cyber warfare periphery, particularly focused of millennial generations, clockworks matrices of social codes. The potential integration with cybernetics. In theory, a quartz memory device could be integrated into a cybernetic implant to provide vast auxiliary memory storage for a human or AI system, analog to digitizing cybernetics. If a high-bandwidth brain-machine interface existed, an individual might offload and retrieve data from an implanted quartz drive, extending human memory or knowledge recall. Much like a computer's external storage does. I recommend your consideration of conductivity through hard drives and auto-conscription processed through the synapses. A scrutiny of Microsoft's recall software, and Microsoft's hidden feature called God Mode, provides empirical evidence of this single centralized folder stored upon the software of every device. That does then show a mainframe configuration, divulging the long-term, naturalizing intention. This concept of cybernetic augmentation aligns with transhumanist visions of enhancing cognition by merging with machines through systematic conversion. It also divulges of the planned integration in the works with such technologies. However, current, mainstream, scientific method is, supposedly, far from achieving a direct neural interface to a 5D quartz storage device. Reading or writing data on these crystals requires specialized laser optics and is not a real-time process suitable for a living brain, but, perhaps that isn't the actual intention. No peer-reviewed study has demonstrated an implantable quartz memory prosthesis, yet, thus, viability remains speculative at present. Of course, if you were to become Superman, would you divulge the details of how you did it? Crystalline elements in the brain, specifically the pineal gland, have been scrutinized in neuroscience. I'm sure you can do the calculus of the conductive potential. Do consider the PIN, private independent neural net, and the neurolinguistical associations. This is forensic linguistics, with a twist. Crystals, human legacy, and the quest for immortality, quartz crystal data storage and the human genome. Advances in optical data storage have turned quartz crystal into a literal vault for humanity's information. Lingo, the storage capacity, then the systemizing efficiency. Researchers at the University of Southampton developed a 5D data storage technique in 2016, using fused quartz to encode vast amounts of data in extremely stable form. Each small disk can hold up to 360 terabytes of data and remain intact for billions of years without degradation. The technology, nicknamed the Superman Memory Crystal, in a nod to science fiction, it uses ultrafast lasers to etch information in 5 dimensions within the crystal. This means data is not just written on the surface, but throughout the volume of quartz, in nanoscale structures, creating a highly durable archive. One landmark demonstration was the preservation of the entire human genome on a quartz memory crystal. In 2024, Southampton scientists announced they had stored a full human genome in a tiny, eternity crystal, creating a virtually indestructible time capsule of our species' genetic blueprint. Fused quartz is one of the most chemically and thermally robust materials on Earth, so is silicone, able to withstand extreme temperatures up to 1000 degrees Celsius, high pressure, and cosmic radiation. And other types of radiation, without losing data. This makes it ideal for long-term preservation of information that might one day reseed life or knowledge, perhaps a telltale of this and with the following. Indicating what the entire establishment is hell-bent upon, building. In fact, the team suggested such a genome crystal could serve as a blueprint to bringing humanity back from extinction, in the far-flung future, if science ever enabled resurrection of our DNA. Certainly seems like it's on the books. Colossal Labs, Biotech SAS, eLab Next, Carlo Labs, and other life science biolabs around the world are examples of this advance in CRISPR gene editing, manipulations affiliated of lab tech resurrections and/or reincarnation of extinct or dormant species, as well as body plans for new ones, including so-called zombie cells, at cellular scales, microorganisms long dormant in permafrost and glacial ice sheets. That I do suspect share affinity with NASA's manipulations of crystalline microbes obtained from crystal cores of Mexico's famed crystal caves, the biotechnical connection. Though concerning for the existing ecology, the same technology and innovations could supposedly safeguard the genomes of endangered species or hold the archives of civilization for millennia. Perhaps already tried and tested, such may be akin to Norway's Doomsday Vault and Sweden's virtual world sim of American Embassy in Second Life, as a technical neural biomapping. This use of quartz crystal marries cutting-edge science with humanity's collective desire to preserve its legacy against the erosive forces of longevity. In scientific terms, it's referred to as, you know, time, what is ultimately an artificial construct, analog and digital. For context, that will resonate and complement this introduction. Interesting correlations connecting New Age art and scientism, and occultic fraternal, religious theocracy with Old Age myth and tradition, is exemplified with the following: creation myth and dispersed placement, artifact lore, population displacements and cultural engineering. Remember, the Mexican festival, Day of the Dead, is a relatively recent Portuguese import. Damien Hirst's For the Love of God, Diamonds, Memory, and Mortality. In 2007, British artist Damien Hirst unveiled For the Love of God, a provocative artwork that tangibly connects preservation and mortality. The piece is a life-size platinum cast of an 18th-century human skull, set with 8,601 flawless diamonds and containing the original human teeth. It cost a whopping $12 million to create. Hirst reputedly took the title from his mother's exasperated question, "For the love of God, what are you going to do next?" highlighting the audacity of his endeavor. The choice of diamonds, often advertised as eternal, a diamond as forever, was quite deliberate. Hirst explained his thinking. Every artwork that's ever interested me is about death. I thought, well, what's the maximum you could pit against death, and diamonds came to mind. By encrusting a mortal skull with one of the hardest, most enduring materials on Earth. The artwork creates a tension between ephemeral life and lasting matter. For the love of God functions as a modern memento mori, directly confronting viewers with the inevitability of death. Yet it is also an ironic take on a vanitas, a tradition in art where luxury and wealth are juxtaposed with mortality. The glittering diamonds speak to humanity's attempt to achieve permanence or immortalize oneself through material wealth. Even as the skull underneath reminds us that no amount of riches can stave off death. As one commentary noted, the skull is a reminder that our existence on Earth is transient, and no adornment can change that fate. Hirst drew inspiration from Mexican Dia de los Muertos traditions and Aztec skull art, where decorating skulls is a way to honor and remember the dead. In a similar vein, his diamond-studded skull can be seen as a lavish symbol of memory and legacy, literally preserving a human visage in precious stone. The diamonds, with their artificial brilliance and supposed indestructibility, evoke permanence and memory, as gemstones often carry the memory of love or status through generations. Whereas the skull anchors the piece in the reality of human mortality. This stark contrast prompts reflection on what we leave behind. The physical remains that decay versus the symbols, art, riches, cultural artifacts through which we attempt to transcend our finite lives. Hirst's work thus straddles admiration for the enduring beauty of gemstones and a critique of our faith in objects to grant immortality. Encapsulating the uneasy relationship between material legacy and mortal truth. Crystal skulls and myth. The Mitchell-Hedges skull, as a symbol. Beyond scientific and artistic realms, crystals and skulls intersect famously in the realm of mythology and pseudoscience. Perhaps the best-known example is the Mitchell-Hedges crystal skull, an allegedly ancient carved quartz skull around which numerous legends have arisen. According to family lore, explorer F.A. Mitchell-Hedges' daughter Anna discovered this crystal skull in 1924 under a collapsed temple altar in Lubonton, Belize. In reality, evidence later emerged that Mitchell-Hedges purchased the skull at a Sotheby's auction in 1943, and its attributes closely match other crystal skulls of dubious provenance. Consider the artifact's transit since. Scientific examination in 2007 revealed that the Mitchell-Hedges skull was carved with rotary cutting tools coated in a modern abrasive, indicating it was likely made in the early 20th century rather than by any pre-Columbian civilization. Indeed, no crystal skull has ever been excavated in a legitimate archaeological context. Studies of several famous skulls in the British Museum, Paris, and Smithsonian collections found they were crafted with 19th-20th century techniques and even traced the quartz material to sources like Brazil or Madagascar outside ancient Mesoamerica. In short, these objects are almost certainly 19th-century European creations rather than mystical Mayan relics. Bobin and the Crystal Skulls. Scam. During 18th-century Paris. Eugene Bobin, a French antiquarian and dealer, became one of the most infamous figures associated with crystal skulls in the 19th century. Operating in Paris, Bobin amassed an extensive collection of pre-Columbian artifacts, including crystal skulls, which he displayed and sold through his museum. He was closely connected with the Mexican Archaeology Scientific Association, an organization dedicated to studying Mexico's ancient civilizations. Though his dealings raised controversy over the authenticity of many artifacts, Bobin played a key role in introducing crystal skulls to Europe, marketing them as genuine, Aztec or Maya, relics. However, later investigations revealed that several of these skulls were forgeries, likely produced in Hamburg, Germany, during the 19th century. These fraudulent skulls were carved from Colombian quartz crystal imported into Europe, where skilled artisans created the supposed, ancient, artifacts. Many of these forgeries ended up in prestigious museum collections, including the British Museum and the Musée de l'Homme in Paris, before being debunked by modern scientific analysis. Despite the exposure of the scam, the crystal skulls myth persisted, fueling ongoing fascination with their supposed mystical properties and connections to lost civilizations. And occultic-styled special interests too, keeping that sham going. The Quartz conspiracy and the distributed memorabilia scattered Trojan. Despite this debunking, crystal skulls have spawned a rich pseudoscientific mythology. Since the late 19th century, rumors and sensational claims have painted these crystal carvings as repositories of ancient wisdom or supernatural power. Paranormal beliefs attributed to crystal skulls include psychic or healing powers, the ability to grant visions, premonitions, or cure illnesses. Anna Mitchell Hedges herself claimed the skull she found could induce visions and even heal cancer, and told fantastical tales such as using its magic to kill someone, and seeing a premonition of JFK's assassination in it. This then correlates with crystal gazing and Black Mirror umbrakinesis. Alas, it indicates connection to psychic abilities, mass movements of excavations of such artifacts, up there back down here, thousands of years of ritual and superstition, and life experience associations, and funneling through the logistic waypoint of Ireland. Well, do the calculus. Considering the recent electric effects coupled with the imbue, and all this notary, it testifies of a Trojan connection played upon through paperclip heels, and yes, this is verging upon conspiracy, but long stationary, ancient artifacts, suddenly moved here and there as showpiece decor in museums. Mary Magdalene's bones scattered in central locations thousands of miles apart, and her skull positioned in what very reminiscent of an astronaut's bodysuit, is beyond questionable bias. As well as purported contamination from such sites regarding plague and superstitious curses, it testifies on its own the morbid resignation and the association to pathological disease. Autoimmune and retroviral mass distributions, further exacerbated through such global transit of pathological incubation and carriers. Catastrophe prevention. Myths popularized ahead of 2012 held that bringing together a set of 13 ancient crystal skulls could avert a global catastrophe or apocalypse foretold by the Maya calendar. The long count was 2012. Consciousness storage. Some New Age spiritualists go further, suggesting the skulls house ancient spirits or knowledge. Author Drunvalo Melchizedek, for instance, wrote that certain indigenous Maya guardians told him their crystal skulls contained souls of ancient Mayans who had entered the skulls to await the time when their ancient knowledge would once again be required. In this narrative, the quartz skull becomes a vessel preserving not just information but actual consciousness. A literal bridge between past minds and future generations. These stories illustrate how crystal skulls have become symbols of transcendence in pop culture and New Age circles, objects through which people project hopes of accessing lost wisdom, healing energies, or eternal life. From the 1970s onward, such skulls increasingly featured in New Age mythology as potent relics often tied to Atlantis or extraterrestrials, reflecting a longing for mystical connections between human civilization and the cosmos. However, no matter how compelling these tales, scientists have found no evidence of any paranormal properties in crystal skulls, apart from their craftsmanship. What they do represent, objectively, is a fusion of human imagery, the skull, seat of the mind, with one of nature's most enduring materials, rock crystal. This fusion alone, even absent magic, resonates strongly. A human head rendered in imperishable crystal is a powerful metaphor for the desire to preserve the human essence beyond death. It is telling that the myth-making around these objects so often returns to themes of knowledge preservation and immortality. The fact that modern analysis shows them to be recent artifacts does not diminish their cultural symbolism as icons of human transcendence, it perhaps even accentuates how modern people invented these myths to fulfill ongoing spiritual yearnings. Preservation, legacy, and transcendence, connecting technology, art, and myth. Although vastly different in origin and credibility, these three threads, quartz data storage, Hearst's diamond skull, and crystal skull legends, all illuminate a common impulse. The human drive to transcend mortality and preserve our essence through enduring materials. Each involves crystalline substances, silica in quartz or glittering carbon in diamond, harnessed as tools or symbols to carry something of ourselves forward in time. with personal anecdotal and public relations, relatively and locally married to those who maintain such traditions. In the technological sectors more recently, fused quartz is used pragmatically to archive our genome and knowledge with unrivaled longevity. Thus, is it a aim to securing human heritage against oblivion. In Hirst's artistic creation, diamonds, formed over eons and famed for their permanence, envelop a human skull to create a physical memento that might hypothetically survive long after flesh and memory have perished, thereby commenting on our urge to memorialize and defy decay. And in the realm of myth, crystal skulls embody the dream that perhaps life or consciousness can be preserved in a tangible object, allowing wisdom, or even souls, to endure through the ages. And resilience just so happens to be quartz's most enduring materialistic quality. Irony, or is there something far more significant going on? The distribution and placement is rather conspicuous, perhaps too conspicuous, to ignore such connective alignments with the logic calculus that presents answers. A striking connection is how information and identity are treated across these examples. The human genome stored in quartz is essentially information encoding life, a digital representation of our biological identity meant to last beyond us. But it is also a mode of potential inertia conductively transmitted, hence the adage, information war, perhaps. The crystal skull myths, well, imagine storing a person's mind or spiritual identity in mineral form, a ethereal luminous, a storage medium, a fanciful parallel to the scientific data archive. And server-sequenced computation, through editorial modulated allowances, stored as mainframes of biometric archetypal data streams, and adhered to by the users of such subunitary technologies, actuating their actions whilst prone to externalizing suggestion, open to reception, automatically, via compulsion rather than the natural originality of impulse. Hence factors of psyche predominance. Therefore, of incorporeal tethered effects, a simulacrum, tied to the literal materialistic imbued settlement of initiated polymerized stationary. Even Hirst's skull, while not literally storing data, the percentage probability and statistics concerning quartz and silicone, and other elements needed is a leached ethereal conspiracy of de imbue, an anchorage that does operate on a symbolic earth-I fact, at a level of intent to store the idea of a person. A skull that once housed a mind in a pristinely preserved, gem-like state. In all cases, a skull or code stands in for a human, and a crystal or gemstone stands in for time-defying permanence. This interplay highlights an intersection of science and cultural mythology. What folklore attributes to magic, crystals safeguarding souls or eternal knowledge, science is beginning to accomplish through technology, by safeguarding human knowledge and DNA in crystals. The transcendent symbol of the crystal thus finds new life in laboratories, even as it persists in art and legend, what is mind-bogglingly ironic, or, perhaps you would agree. Synergy of supersymmetry just happen in. Historically, humans have always sought ways to achieve a form of immortality, whether through faith in an afterlife, the legacy of art and literature, or the handing down of genes and stories. Quartz genome storage and diamond skull art are modern expressions of this age-old pursuit. The former trusts in rational engineering to freeze time for our data, and the latter uses artistic alchemy to imbue a mortal reminder with an aura of the eternal. The Crystal Skull saga, on the other hand, shows how our imaginations fill gaps that technology cannot. It sprang from a period of fascination with ancient cultures and perhaps a dissatisfaction with the limits of science, giving people a myth to believe in, transcending death through mystical means. Perhaps there is something more significant to this lore and genetic collectively shared memory from archetypal significance, long since past, yet handed down through the divinity of man. An interesting synchronicity is the relativity of such lore, in that mystically sensed, and the Anunnaki, who were purportedly deities from ancient Mesopotamia in mythology, particularly in Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian texts. They were believed to be powerful beings who influenced human civilization. With some interpretations, especially in modern pseudoscience and conspiracy theories, suggesting they were extraterrestrial entities that engineered humanity through genetic manipulation. The God gene, VMAD2, is a controversial concept proposed by geneticist Dean Hamer, who suggested that a specific gene variant might influence spiritual or mystical experiences. Some theorists have linked this idea to the Anunnaki, proposing that these ancient beings engineered human DNA to either instill or suppress higher consciousness. However, it is said by the conventions of academia that there is no scientific evidence supporting such claims, and thus mainstream genetics rejects the notion of a single God gene to being responsible for spirituality. That it isn't holistically refuted, though, is compelling evidence to the contrary. Ultimately, the integration of these elements, advanced technology, contemporary art, and enduring myth, paints a rich picture of the human legacy project. We see a continuum from concrete scientific efforts, like encoding genomes in quartz for future revival, to symbolic gestures, bejeweled skulls in galleries, to legendary archetypes of artifacts, such as crystal skulls with imagined powers. All this serve, in their own way, as repositories of human existence, be it literal data, physical remains, or cultural hopes. They converge on the notion that through ingenuity, creativity, or belief, something of us can be made to last forever. In the crystalline clarity of quartz or diamond, we project our desire for transcendence, a hope that even as flesh fails, memory and essence can be preserved. Whether in a hard science lab or a mythic tale, the idea that we can imprint ourselves onto imperishable matter remains one of the most profound expressions of our quest to overcome the impermanence of life, and the manipulations through filial imprinting and natural emulation of behaviors, exemplified of constructive and/or destructive elements, concerning the development of personhoods. That said, related research in memory prosthetics offers a proof of concept for neurocybernetic memory augmentation. In 2018, a team led by Theodore Berger and Robert Hampson successfully tested a hippocampal prosthesis in humans that uses an electronic model to reinforce memory encoding signals. Brodmann Area 35 distinguishes this area as hippocampal, thus a central hub of photographic memory and visual cortex, with optical augmenting potential. By recording a patient's neural firing patterns during memory tasks, and replaying optimized patterns via implanted electrodes, they improved short-term memory performance by approximately 37% and long-term recall by approximately 35% in those trials. This closed-loop implant effectively writes information into the brain's memory circuits using electrical stimulation based on a memory code model. Such results demonstrate that technologically enhancing memory is feasible with invasive devices, yet also, it does encompass the potential of malignant delete torus and editorial aggregation. Thoughts said to having energy that could indicate just why the mainstream internet is experiencing scrubbing the databanks, aka real-world thoughtography, Mandela effects, leaving masses of cataloged populations second-guessing their very life experience, opening up the prospect of such editorial and delete torus affecting and eventing. Eventual fusion of this approach with high-density storage could mean a person might store external data and incorporate it into biological memory. In fact, it definitely seems to be of objective with such push towards a ever-apparent augmented reality theme-based technocracy. For example, an AI could curate information from a quartz drive and stimulate neural patterns to impart knowledge, remotely and locally. Think of the imbue of crystalline blood-to-neural fusion as new baseline aggregations here, a conductive potential and needing processing through tailored electrochemicals and hydrogenesis, with complementary delivery through typical hands-free rootkits of back-engineered smart devices, a viable hydrobiomancy through technomancy. Soft metals of pre-aligning and potential uploads and downloads of dynamic server sequencing, electromagnetically effected through energy weaponizations as electrics of things. While this remains hypothetical, it suggests a framework where durable external memory, like quartz including intelligent interfaces, could augment human cognition in the future. 27.7% of the Earth's crust is silicon. Silicon is an inorganic material derived from such amorphous ore, thus the entropy, that is, lack of order or predictability, gradual decline into disorder. All conventional microchips are manufactured with silicon, and thus a sponsorship of this material base is evidently a tempered universality to uniform metric systems by its aggregate. This will become apparent as we continue our analysis of how such affecting has, and is, a daily happenstance indiscriminately. From a scientific legitimacy standpoint, Quartz memory is a verified data storage technology, but its integration with the human brain lacks any experimental support so far. Significant breakthroughs in neural interface hardware would be needed to make use of the crystal's capacity, in vivo, processes occurring in a living organism. At present, Quartz memory serves more as an archival medium than a neural implant, though, so is the synaptic coverage of the biogenic specimen. This is commonly referred to as the subconscious. Neuromorphic computing research might bridge this gap eventually, if optical or magnetic storage elements could interface with neurons, or if brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, attain extremely high bandwidth. In summary, the Superman Quartz memory offers tantalizing storage potential for cyborg augmentation. But it remains a distant prospect without substantial advances in BCI technology and biointegration. Nanotechnology has been making strides in exponential advances, and it is suspected as a predictive plagiarized threat in its overall applied outcome, laid of the groundwork already. We can envision such with the escalation of cheat coding exams and assignments, and thus academic qualifications and competence. Magnetite clusters in the brain and cybernetic links, natural occurrence and hypotheses. Biologically, tiny crystals of magnetite Fe3O4 are known to occur in many organisms, including humans. Magnetite is a ferromagnetic mineral, and in animals like birds and insects it underpins magnetoreception for navigation. And this then accentuates the hypothesis of open reception and psyche predominance, via such pin architectures, stylizing elicited conformity. Humans also have magnetite nanoparticles in the brain, possibly formed as a byproduct of iron metabolism and soft metal saturation. A viable blood oxides and enzymic excretion of such biotechnical conductive imbue, proceeding. These crystals have been found especially in the cerebellum and hippocampus, though their function in humans is not well understood. It is circumstantial, however, subject to current accepted, known and publicized, conventions. A policy brokerage of special interests is suspected with interactive attenuations in terms of Cylon colonizations, simply put. A streamlining aggregate of synthetic pre-alignments to mechanical processes, predetermined and supplanted via terminal sources, a machine prescription and auto-compilation. Researchers have proposed intriguing hypotheses. Endogenous magnetite might play a role in brain information processing, acting as a storage or transduction element for signals. In one hypothesis, magnetite clusters could facilitate magnetic signal communication between neurons, supplementing the brain's electrical and chemical signaling. Remember, electromagnetism is a word that describes electricity and magnetism, hence a proponent of conductive power through powernetic, PC power users, Internet of Things. And brain-computer augmentation, simulacrum and avatar, holographic records, sentient world environments of dual-based rebasing affecting and eventing, specimens in multiplex matrices. Martinez-Baniklaka, and others in 2010, suggested that magnetite nanoparticles distributed in neuronal membranes could aid in perception, transduction, and even long-term memory storage by responding to magnetic fields generated by neural activity. In essence, this is a speculative model where the brain might have a form of magnetic memory, in addition to synaptic connections. Consider electric and observer effects in terms of alchemical and physics frameworks. This is, what I suspect, as a sign of the aggregate in active contention to gaining cognitive sensory acknowledgements through publicizing, to categorized grouping. In dynamic free flow of open-ended discussion and dialogue, setting the stage for future rendezvous. Meeting the alignments through propaganda enmeshed with embellishing provocative thought experiment and groupthink, precog, retrocog, a clever cybertron insidious of linear debasing hierarchy. The notion of magnetite-based memory was published as a hypothesis. An important note then pertains to mainstream neuroscience, reserving attribution of memory encoding to synaptic plasticity, rather than magnetic domains. Nonetheless, a commentary in PNAS observes that various researchers further proposing that endogenous magnetite might play a key role in perception, transduction, and long-term storage of information in the human brain, a sign that the idea, while controversial, has drawn academic interest. At the same time, other research on magnetite in the brain has raised concerns. Environmental magnetite nanoparticles from air pollution have been found in human brain tissue and are associated with oxidative stress and tissue damage, possibly contributing to Alzheimer's pathology. This then does also facilitate the argument of hydrogenic leaching upon the bones and bone marrow, and thus a connection to degradation and devastation. As the bodily defenses initiate white cell production from the marrow, hence a nuclear biology of static aggregation potential is a viable connection to all this. It does promote probable cause of arthritis and other brittle bone deficiencies. Thus, magnetite in the brain presents a double-edged sword. It might be biologically useful in small, biogenic forms, but excess or foreign magnetite could be harmful. Cybernetic applications of magnetite. If magnetite nanoparticles in the brain can interact with external magnetic fields, they offer a potential avenue for non-invasive neural interfacing. Scientists are actively exploring magnetogenetics, analogous to optogenetics but using magnetic fields to influence neurons. A recent breakthrough called NanoMind magnetogenetic interface for neurodynamics showed that by genetically introducing magnetized receptors in specific neurons and injecting magnetic nanoparticles, one can remotely control brain circuits with rotating magnetic fields. A very worrying trend of procedural generation capacitation, just as incapacitation. In a 2023 Nature Nanotechnology study, researchers modulated complex behaviors in mice such as appetite and maternal care by activating or inhibiting targeted neurons via magnetic fields, with the magnetite-based nanoparticles acting as internal transducers. This wireless control of neural activity suggests future brain-computer interfaces could use magnetic particles as an implantable, wire-free link to external devices, such as nano-ridge growing lasers at the nanoscale in ridges reminiscent of irrigation in agriculture. Thus light receptors of a wireless grid tapping into the Earth's ambient energy and electrostatic and also irradiations is hypothetically viable. Via further examples of EMF and cold fusion, room temp from an absolute zero, inert entropy and a 0-point wireless energy source. That ties in with a photo and electroluminous memory aggregate. The advantage is that magnetic fields penetrate tissue safely and can reach deep brain regions non-invasively. Alas, at densities it obviously still poses high risk factors of degradation. For human augmentation, one could imagine magnetite nanoparticles introduced in the brain to enable communication with a wearable device or AI. For instance, an external headband could generate patterned magnetic fields to stimulate magnetite-rich neural clusters, conveying information or artificial sensory input. Unlike electrodes, this approach is shown by Anakiva and others in 2015. Requiring no tethered implants, magnetic nanoparticles, like iron oxide, injected and later excited by alternating magnetic fields to trigger neural firing. This is then a huge concern because it opens up very real possibilities of future tech, electrochemical weapons systems, through excreting phoresis carriers at the mammalian macroscale. Through mRNA carriers molecularly diffused with chemical agencies such as phosphorus, fluorescence and pharma inorganic enzymic oxides, perspirated acrylic and emulsion residues. Thus contaminated bodies excreting a synthetic recombinated terraforming agency through the atmospheres. Such a systemizing aggregation might one day feed data into the brain, an example of a magnetic signal tampering, a encoding of optical and harmonic-based ultrasound. Ultraviolet imagery and acoustics, stimulating a visual or auditory cortex, 1 to many, many to 1 by 1, in wide area, chain reaction states. A feasible denial of service, linear attenuated, DDoS, extracting neural signals of bandwidth allowance. Magnetite's magnetic state changing with neural currents could theoretically be read by sensitive detectors, i.e., high-tech electrodes. These possibilities remain speculative but are grounded in existing techniques for magnetically stimulating brain tissue. Yet the cybernetic cyberspace and spatial brain transfusion capability is obvious concern, especially in terms of cyberwarfare facilitation. Feasibility and challenges. Integrating magnetite for cybernetic purposes faces several challenges. Biologically, we would need to ensure the nanoparticles are biocompatible and targeted to specific neurons. Further to the example, genetic engineering was used in mice to express heat-sensitive channels for magnetothermal activation. Ethically and medically, introducing magnetic particles into a healthy human brain for augmentation raises safety questions. Studies show uncoated magnetite can generate reactive oxygen species and cell stress, though coatings can mitigate toxicity. From an engineering perspective, reading complex information out of the brain via magnetism is harder than stimulating it. Today's magnetoencephalography (MEG) can pick up the brain's magnetic fields, but spatial resolution is limited. Research into optically pumped magnetometers and other advanced sensors is ongoing to improve non-invasive brain signal reading. In summary, harnessing brain magnetite for interfaces is plausible and supported by early experiments, but it is in nascent stages. It straddles the line between emerging science and speculative idea, promising enough for serious research, but not yet a proven method of cognitive enhancement in humans. Blood fusion with cybernetic augmentation. The concept of cybernetic blood fusion. Blood fusion, with cybernetics, refers to integrating technology directly into the bloodstream or leveraging blood as a medium for augmentation. One interpretation is the use of nanotechnology in blood. Injectable nanoscale machines are devices that flow through blood vessels to monitor or enhance body functions. In a broader sense, it covers any bio-cybernetic hybrid involving blood, such as artificial blood cells, nanoparticle drug delivery via blood, or even using blood to power implants. Sci-fi has popularized images of nanobots in the blood, repairing tissues or boosting performance. Scientifically, this field overlaps with nanomedicine and advanced prosthetics. For example, developing artificial red blood cells or respirocytes that outperform natural cells in carrying oxygen. Robert Freitas Jr. proposed the respirocyte concept, a theoretical mechanical red blood cell that could allow a person to hold their breath for hours, nearly 2 decades ago. While no such device exists yet, research into synthetic blood substitutes is real and active. Recent bioengineering work has created artificial RBCs that mimic natural ones in size and flexibility and can even carry oxygen and therapeutic agents. A 2017 review highlights that an ideal HB-loaded synthetic RBC for transfusion is still not achieved, but progress continues in nano-engineering these components. Another emerging approach is to make hybrid, cyborg cells. For instance, scientists have experimented with coating living cells with nanomaterials to enhance their function, such as magnetic nanoparticles attached to white blood cells to guide them to tumors by magnets. More directly, micro and nanorobots are being developed that can swim through bodily fluids. A striking example used, spirulina algae, as a template to create helical magnetic micro-swimmers coated in magnetite, which could be guided to deliver drugs at specific targets. These tiny robots, on the order of a few micrometers, can move through blood vessels when steered by external magnetic fields, carrying payloads for therapy or combat. Such work blurs the line between biological cells and machines, effectively creating micro-scale cyborg agents in the bloodstream. That algae is used as a biocircuitry facilitates the nitroplast plasticity of the imbue, and tempering such magnetogenetic biotechnical aggregation. For the introduction of fertilizers is tantamount to ecological microcosm devastation and is central to the concern of agricultural industrialization and massive die-offs. Augmentation via blood-borne tech. Integrating cybernetics with blood could yield several augmentation benefits. Enhanced oxygenation and stamina. Artificial blood cells or nanobots could massively improve oxygen delivery. This would let individuals survive low oxygen conditions or perform high-intensity activity longer without fatigue. For example, theoretical respirocytes could provide the equivalent of many times a normal breath's oxygen, enabling extreme athletic or underwater endurance. While this is theoretical, perfluorocarbon emulsions have been tested as blood substitutes to carry oxygen and have shown promise in reaching tiny capillaries that red cells cannot. This demonstrates on a chemical level what nano devices might achieve in the future. Real-time health monitoring. Nanotech sensors in the blood could continuously monitor biomarkers, glucose, hormones, pathogens, and transmit data to an external device. This effectively turns the circulatory system into a distributed sensor network. Some current research is looking at smart biosensors that can be injected and read non-invasively for medical monitoring. Now let's introduce some names and faces to our analytical logic calculus. Professor George Church and Dr. Angela Belcher are prominent figures in the fields of genetics and biological engineering, respectively, with significant contributions to synthetic biology and nanotechnology. George Church is a molecular geneticist renowned for his pioneering work in genome sequencing and synthetic biology. He has been instrumental in developing technologies that have advanced genetic research and its applications. Angela Belcher is a materials scientist and a biological engineer recognized for her innovative approach to engineering organisms for material synthesis. Notably, in 2007, she and her team at MIT developed a lithium-ion battery using a genetically engineered virus, creating an environmentally friendly process for battery production. Belcher's interdisciplinary work has led to collaborations with various institutions and researchers. For instance, she has worked with colleagues at MIT, including Paula Hammond, to develop non-invasive imaging systems that have improved cancer diagnostics and treatment. Both Church and Belcher have mentored researchers who have made significant strides in synthetic biology. Julie Norville, trained under both, contributed to early demonstrations of CRISPR in eukaryotic cells and has been involved in developing tools for genome recoding. As of February 2025, Angela Belcher continues her work at MIT, focusing on harnessing biological processes for technological applications. Her recent recognition with the 2024 National Medal of Science underscores her ongoing contributions to science and engineering. While specific details about George Church's current projects as of 2025 are not provided in the available sources, his long-standing impact on genetics and synthetic biology continues to influence ongoing research and applications in these fields. Both researchers have been associated with leading institutions such as MIT and have collaborated with various organizations to advance their research. Their work exemplifies the integration of biology with technology, leading to innovations with broad applications in energy, medicine, and materials science. The evolution of energy storage technologies has seen significant advancements, particularly with the exploration of biologically inspired methods. Among these, the development of viral batteries stands out, largely due to the pioneering work of Dr. Angela Belcher. This report delves into the concerns surrounding viral batteries, innovations transitioning from traditional batteries to capacitor-based systems, and Dr. Belcher's biochemical contributions in this domain. Viral batteries, innovations and concerns. Viral batteries utilize genetically engineered viruses to assemble battery components at the nanoscale. Dr. Angela Belcher and her team at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology (MIT) have been at the forefront of this research. They demonstrated that viruses, specifically the M13 bacteriophage, can be modified to construct both the anode and cathode of lithium-ion batteries. This method offers an environmentally friendly alternative to traditional battery manufacturing, as it operates at room temperature and avoids toxic solvents. Professor Church and Dr. Belcher's biochemical contributions are interdisciplinary and multifaceted, adopting an approach that merges biology, chemistry, and materials science to innovate in energy storage. Energization is inceptional to the fundamentals of working order, that is quite clear to see. And what the life is teaching to being a necessity, furthering the question of why do we even eat food to begin with, and what eventually happens to the biomatter of the world. Chemical energy is a definitive example of the bio-exchange ratio of why we eat or her creatures for sustainment, and yes, it does seem rather crude, but I posit it is how the life has survived durations, evolving a myriad of ultimate survival adaptations, as if signifying a settlement of systems from many varying proportions of calamities. A arc of homage experienced of disruption and renewal, ergo, enlightenment is seemingly in line with its ultimate ambition. Therefore the question presents, is death ultimately alien to the life? I think the correct answer to such conundrum is a resounding no, that death is unto life, as life is unto death, transitions, phases, and renewal of recycled stuffs. That this is not all that we are, of. And so it does testify of the reach of home, beyond, and so too perhaps, are, open reception, albeit taken advantage of and manipulated as if caste-based systemized monopolies of have and have-nots, whilst procuring upon lives lived, as if productions of experience and mere commodity, picking and choosing who attains ascendancy and who perishes. A resounding chorus of the folly that has presented to humanity themes of worship and ritual, abuse, fostering malpractice and substandards throughout primitive man. Instigated by sinister forces hell-bent upon squandering and capitalizing our lifting out from such drudgery that has been, for far too long, and who undermining all of our collective works and contributions thereof. Belcher's notable contributions include the promise of viral batteries and genetic tech advancements. A primary concern is the potential biohazard of incorporating viruses into consumer products. This has already been the case, as well as reported lab leaks by whistleblowers. Alas, it resounds of the subversion to the hypocrisy, for resurrection of long-dormant viruses is a hot topic amongst geneticists as of late. For it is proposed in conventional studies reporting that the viruses become inert during the manufacturing process, rendering them incapable of causing infections. What indicates one of two things: sterilization and artificially imposed inertia. Either way, it tells of the topsy-turvy propaganda in play upon the public psyche as a linear longitudinal procession. It is far too convenient to assuming sufficient safety measures have been completely covered. In fact, it would be foolhardy to assume, given the recent onslaught of pandemics and ongoing epidemics, that could have been much worse, and, given prosthetic pathology, the next time could truly actually be devastating. Thus this tech needs to be thoroughly investigated and regulated, for misplaced powers do exist. Scalability. Transitioning from laboratory-scale prototypes to mass production poses challenges. Ensuring consistent quality and performance in large-scale manufacturing requires further research and development. Public perception. The term virus often carries negative connotations. Educating the public about the safety and benefits of viral batteries is essential for widespread acceptance. Advancements in capacitor-based energy storage. While batteries store energy chemically, capacitors store energy electrostatically, allowing for rapid charge and discharge cycles. Recent innovations have focused on combining the high energy density of batteries with the quick charge capabilities of capacitors, leading to the development of hybrid systems known as supercapacitors or ultracapacitors. Capacitor relays, which utilize capacitors to provide quick bursts of energy, have also seen advancements. These relays are crucial in applications requiring immediate power delivery, such as in certain industrial machinery and emergency systems. Professor George Church is a pioneering geneticist and molecular engineer renowned for his groundbreaking contributions to genomics, synthetic biology, and genome sequencing. He holds the position of Robert Winthrop Professor of Genetics at Harvard Medical School, and serves as a professor of health sciences and technology at both Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology (MIT). Additionally, he is a founding core faculty member at the Wyss Institute for Biologically Inspired Engineering at Harvard University. Genomic and synthetic molecular science. In 1984, alongside Walter Gilbert, Church developed the first direct genomic sequencing method, a pivotal advancement that laid the foundation for the Human Genome Project that was launched in 1990. This innovation led to the first commercial genome sequence of Helicobacter pylori in 1994. Church's work has been instrumental in reducing the cost of genome sequencing dramatically, from billions of dollars to a few $100s today. Beyond sequencing, Church has been a leader in synthetic biology. His laboratory has developed technologies for synthesizing whole genes and engineering entire genomes with increased speed, accuracy, and cost-effectiveness. These advancements have significant applications in regenerative medicine and the bioproduction of chemicals. Innovations in genetic sequencing. Church's contributions to genetic sequencing are far-reaching in this sector. He invented molecular multiplexing and tags, homologous recombination methods, and DNA array synthesizers. His innovations have been foundational for numerous companies, including Veritas Genetics, which offers comprehensive human genome sequencing. Emerging technologies and concepts. While specific details on viral batteries, capacitor relays, BrainGate, mini-life, sees projects, and the direct connection between optogenetics and quartz memory are not readily available in public sources, Church's work encompasses several related areas. I estimate that there is active, RJ-Mod, superimposed environments of designer constructs that imitate the actual surface. Pareidolia is a clue of this inclusive of reoccurring patterns of crop circles and other aerial phenomena. The etymology of the word photograph is Greek, and it means printed and drawn in light. This is a major clue of what, actually, has been instrumental of crop circles and ufology. And one can imagine such an architectural modeling involving altered carbon states of nanobots at molecular mini-life scalability, combined of geometric geomancy stylized imitation. DNA data storage. Church has explored encoding digital information into DNA sequences. In 2012, he successfully encoded his book into DNA, demonstrating the potential of DNA as a medium for long-term data storage. Optogenetics and genetic manipulation. Church's research includes developing tools for precise gene editing and control. His team was among the first to implement CRISPR-Cas9 for accurate gene editing in human cells, a technique that has revolutionized genetic manipulation. Quantum and qubit applications. While not directly linked to quantum computing, the precision and scale of Church's genomic work contribute to computational biology, which may intersect with quantum computing advancements in the future and even now, given IBM's quantum supercomputer, Quantum Series, System 1 and System 2. With development of several quantum processors including Eagle, Osprey, Heron, and yes, EVE Online MMORPG video gamers will, no doubt, resonate with such flagship names, associated to the actual pixelated animations they fly around for literal fun and games. Entrepreneurial ventures of Church include his co-founding of approximately 50 biotechnology companies, translating his scientific innovations into practical applications, indicating it's far beyond monetary ambitions, and more central to social engineering, thus warring applications and associated apparatuses, can't be ruled out. Notably, he co-founded Nebula Genomics, aiming to provide affordable and secure whole genome sequencing services. George Church's claim to nanotechnology as its pioneer is very much questionable. For the extraction of nanostructures at the Ural Mountains in Russia in 1991 is a tantalizing clue about the origins of nanotechnology. These manufactured coils were initially discovered during geological research associated with the extraction of gold in the Ural Mountains. They extracted such nanostructures from permafrost carbon dated to 300,000 years. The fragmented structures include coils, spirals, shafts, and other unidentified components. What spurred in-depth molecular analysis of the materials is unknown. But I estimate that it is, perhaps, due to the location of an object requiring and encouraging the motivation for such in-depth explorations. According to an analysis from the Russian Academy of Sciences in Syktyvkar, the largest pieces found are mostly copper, while the smallest are made of tungsten and molybdenum, indicating a high-tech precision engineering. While the largest of these objects measure 1.18 inches, the smallest are only 1/10,000th of an inch, and many exhibit golden mean proportions. Their shape suggests that they are manufactured and not naturally occurring metal fragments. In fact, they have been found to closely resemble the same miniature components of contemporary nanotechnology. They have apparently been known and studied for some time too. The artifacts have been studied at 4 different facilities in Helsinki, St. Petersburg, and Moscow. However, further research into these tiny structures seems to have ended in 1999 with the death of Dr. Johannes Fiebag, a principal researcher of the find. In fact, we can estimate that such findings has been hushed up because of the drive to weaponizing such materials and extracting and incorporating such nanotechnology as Nanomind and BrainGate. Mini-Life and Seas projects, and other integrations, highly classified engineering projects designed as creationist theorems. Belcher's biochemical contributions are interdisciplinary and multifaceted. Such merging of biology, chemistry, and materials science to innovate in energy storage, facilitating information management systems and memory attributions of storage media and multiplex advancements. Energization is inceptional to the fundamentals of working order, that is quite clear to see, and what the life is teaching to being a necessity, furthering the question of why do we eat food. Chemical energy is the production and distribution, as well as a bio-exchange ratio, sharing, just, ecophage, on steroids. Targeted healing benefits and enhancement. Swarms of nanorobots might be directed to repair tissue damage, attack infections, or even modify cells, a concept often referred to as nanobots, for precision surgery. Though it sounds like science fiction, early trials of magnetically driven micro-robots have demonstrated targeted drug delivery in living animals. Similarly, magnetite nanoparticles are already used clinically in a technique called magnetic hyperthermia to destroy cancer cells with localized heating, and as carriers in experimental targeted drug delivery systems. From an AI augmentation perspective, the data from these blood-borne devices could be analyzed by machine learning to optimize an individual's physiology. One could imagine an AI that learns a person's metabolic patterns and directs nano devices to release hormones or nutrients at just the right time to maximize cognitive performance or mood. This is high-tech biohacking, apparently still in its infancy stages. Another angle is powering implants using the blood's chemical energy. Researchers have explored fuel cell implants that generate electricity from blood glucose, which could run low-power cybernetic devices continuously. Scientific feasibility. Many components of cybernetic blood are under development in biotechnology and medicine, but full integration for augmentation is not yet realized for commercial production. Artificial blood for transfusions is in clinical research, i.e., lab-grown red cells, or engineered hemoglobin carriers, aka synthetic blood. This tech is primarily aimed at medical use, yet it is evident of the super-rich divide with these types of technologies. Nanorobotic therapy devices remain experimental. Issues like immune reactions, control precision, and safe biodegradation must be solved. However, the steady progress in nanomedicine indicates that some form of blood augmentation is plausible in the future. The key breakthroughs needed include reliable long-term biocompatibility for any devices in blood and robust external control, likely via magnetic or ultrasound means, as radio signals don't penetrate deep tissue well. Nanorobots can permeate the tissue membranes of the biogenic host, or target, excreting and lacing compounds deployed to diffusing agencies such as hybrid variants of gadolinium media contrasts. Theoretically, it is commonly used typically in CAT and MRI scanning. Therefore, it isn't too far-fetched by this know-how to proposing the feasibility of remote viewing antagonistic elements in society as antigenic and antithetic misanthropist enemies to real progress. Peer-reviewed studies support partial aspects, oxygen carriers, magnetic guidance, lending scientific legitimacy to the general concept even if a human nanobot fusion is years or decades away. Pseudoscience and experimental biohacking approaches. In parallel to formal research, a subculture of biohackers and DIY experimenters is actively trying to enhance human abilities with ad hoc methods. These range from relatively benign, taking nootropic supplements, to extreme body modifications. While often lacking rigorous scientific validation, such experimentation offers insight into imaginative approaches and serves as case studies in the desire for augmentation. Here we explore some notable pseudoscientific or speculative methodologies, as well as their outcomes. Biohacking implants and grinders. One prominent branch of biohacking involves surgical self-implantation of devices, often by hobbyists known as grinders. A common DIY enhancement is the implantation of small neodymium magnets under the skin, typically in a fingertip. The magnet, once implanted, connects the person to electromagnetic fields. It vibrates slightly in response to nearby EM sources, giving the person a new sensory perception, the ability to feel magnetic fields. Though the procedure is informal, many have reported that these fingertip magnets effectively act as a sixth sense. For example, sensing if a live wire is carrying current or when a speaker is on. This community-driven experimentation demonstrated the concept of sensory augmentation with a simple implant. Tim Cannon, a co-founder of the Pittsburgh-based Grindhouse Wetware Group, said, "As soon as I heard that you could get this extra sense, I was blown away. Now I can feel electromagnetic fields. This, coupled with a afflicted storage medium of thoughtography in authoritarian authorship, is very worrying. As radio traffic sense data has been experienced firsthand, exemplified of hearing voices and dreamscape, so-called telepathy, extra extensible stimuli, though once again, it isn't necessarily a boogeyman theme, but alas, nightmares have and continue to be experienced by the most vulnerable. Perhaps this is a signage of precursors of motion capture and frequency tampering, for this does seem to indicate later reprisals, denoted of the indiscriminate ordeal. Primarily experienced later in life is neural latency and development of neurological issues, as if a delete torus compromised memory. Indicated of brain fog, typically associated to pathological infection, and anxieties in neurogenic conversion via such psychological intrusive interventions. That also seems to indicate an inner confliction that I propose as simply an indication of autonomic reaction to foreign intrusions, artificially excreted. Corresponding to a molecular diffusion and warring strata, worked through as a modular lobotomy, mRNA brute force sequential outcome. Such outcome preliminarily anticipated by misanthropist and exophilic organized forces, denoted of paramilitary and breakaway civilization inner cliques. That has only amplified real-world altercations between citizens, especially among the young, as if intended to sponsoring such quagmire of dysfunction and a species in managed chaos. Thus what has transpired is a herd mentality among the elderly, set in ways and systematically emulated as role models. That is in fact a further signage of the synchronized attenuation procured culturally, over time. Yet a rebellious streak by the young indicates a subliminal and subconscious and even unconscious necessity to repelling such chaotic shambles. That tells of the procedural regenerative disorderly conduct of parental misguidance. Thereby the example of a latent psyche predominance ergokinesis, influencing the energetics of electric effects, psychically, fostered as a regenerative subliminal subversion of repetitive barrage. Perhaps further congruent with neurolinguistics and programming. To such extents whereby the archetype maintaining or preparing a fear-based and debased trauma, emulating such anticipation as a probability of reprisals of altercations with others, hence a latent constant anxiety, self-induced as a cognition in inertia, rather than such remaining potential outcomes, instead oriented as inevitable. The upheavals in society and systemized disconnect, in contention of a politicized status quo de facto, authoritarian publicity, tells of a liminal news talk Montauk, biometric attenuation. Only accentuated through such technical apparatuses as body plans. Further to the example is egosyntonic elicitation techniques, avowed via belief systems and tempered proxy aggregations. Typically proving the association to religious fallacy and primitive linear repetitive spiel, in alignment to central hubs of tyrannical styled influence. The magnet implants don't confer psychic powers per se, but they do transmit and therefore a transmission in emission, orchestrated as a conductive power, via such imbued agencies. That does then highlight the feasibility of traditional memory, augmented as a superhuman memory, and foreign excretion of magnetite and other elements such as mica or copper, indiscriminately. Whilst procured as caste conscripts, in insufferable subsistence, typical of the showmanship of cults, and thus a brain net of clusters, wide area of municipalities such as city spheres. The aggregate of such being the byproducts of the life, central to perspirated and secreted contents, and the electrical proximity. Irradiative in its conducted alignment, cold fusion and ambient energy. Such implants can expand upon the human experience in a tangible and practical way. But the potential misuse and abuse is also immediately emphasized of misanthropist terrorists that we have experienced time and time again. It is the binary oversight, combined of and regulated free flow of back-engineered capability, that is the issue ultimately. Special interests tempering a fallacy of end-to-end equal opportunism in society, against societal civil liberties, a promoting of chaotic communal disconnects socially. Primary to the problem that needs to be rigorously tackled, and we can achieve this through education and knowledgeable public maturity. Biohackers have also implanted devices like RFID chips for unlocking doors or storing data, notably. Professor Kevin Warwick implanted an RFID in his arm in 1998 to become one of the first cyborgs able to interact with building electronics via an implant. Grindhouse Wetware and other groups have prototyped subdermal LED displays. One called the North Star was intended to glow through the skin and provide a compass or biometric data readout. They also developed a vibrating compass anklet so the wearer constantly feels where north is, effectively internalizing a direction sense. These projects are often open source and experimental, and while they generate media buzz, they are usually not documented in peer-reviewed literature. Still, they reflect active experimentation on the path to integrating more technology with the human body using readily available materials. Psychical or cognitive enhancement attempts. Some biohackers target the brain and mind more directly. There have been DIY attempts at transcranial brain stimulation. For instance, homemade TDCS, transcranial direct current stimulation, devices to purportedly boost creativity or learning. The science on TDCS is mixed and complex, and unsupervised use is risky, but its popularity grew from the idea that a 9-volt battery and electrodes on the skull could hack the brain. In a more bizarre experiment, one biohacker group, Science for the Masses, 2015, infused a volunteer's eyes with a chlorophyll analog, CE6, chlorin E6, to grant night vision. The subject reportedly could detect people in the woods in near-dark conditions after the chemical made his eyes photosensitive to infrared. However, this was a one-off trial with no rigorous data and significant uncertainty about safety. It borders on pseudoscience, but illustrates the lengths of human augmentation enthusiasts to propagating. Psychical enhancement could also refer to efforts to enhance psychic or mental abilities. Historically, there have been military and fringe science experiments on telepathy or remote viewing, i.e., the Stargate project, but none yielded reproducible augmentation of psychic abilities. Apparently, in the biohacker realm, some have speculated about using magnetic or electrical brain stimulation to enhance intuition or even induce telepathic communication. In reality, early steps in brain-to-brain communication are purely scientific. Researchers have achieved direct brain-to-brain signal transfer in labs, for example, sending a simple fire command from one person's EEG to trigger movement in another person via TMS, non-invasive, transcranial magnetic stimulation. As a biometric biocircuitry exemplified of brain nets and brain datum. The risk has been and is the advent of power nets and measured allowance, particular to academic profession and bourgeoisie as opposed to proletariat classes of society. And cheat coding plagiarism. This is not telepathy in the mystical sense, but it shows technology might someday link minds. In fact, I propose it has already been an implementation, manipulated via biotechnical varieties. Perhaps initially to cheating exams of education, and propagated as a mind flare psychical predominance of unitary macrocosmic significance at the mammalian scale. Pseudoscientific approaches, like wearing particular crystals to boost memory or extrasensory perception, ESP, remain unvalidated by controlled studies, yet it is proven of the track record. Questionable of actual peer review by conventions, to more a confederacy of cabals, mafia, and gangs. Averse to embellished grandeurs of omnipotent powers through such power nets and brain drains, via ergonomics and vanity conscription, a hybrid monetary of acquisitions and geopolitics. Brain net, privatizing independent neural net clusters. As the allure persists, some individuals and groups attempt unproven methods like binaural beats, brain hacking, with fasting or extreme meditation. Or even implanting rumored psychic amplifiers, none documented scientifically. Yet it does prove of a boycotting such masses simultaneous of ascribing grandeurs as if illicitly flamboyant in its seduction. Ergo conveniently ignorant of its sanctions, to linear cognitive reprimands as if such allowance of acuity, i.e., intelligence as if a warped and malignant hypocrisy. In its infancy, moderated by its ongoing publicity. In evaluating these pseudoscientific methods, the common theme is the desire to transcend normal human limits immediately, often using readily available means. They sometimes yield partial success, as in magnet implants granting magnetoreception, but often fall short of their extravagant claims. Importantly, they highlight ethical and safety concerns. Left Anonym, a famous grinder, performed self-surgeries under non-sterile conditions and suffered injuries, a reminder of the risks outside regulated research. The scientific legitimacy of biohacking endeavors is variable. Some are grounded in real science, purportedly, RFID implants that are essentially safe and proven, though this is easily questionable now. Implanted magnets to an extent are also proposed as safe and proven by their peer review, while others amount to anecdote or wishful thinking. Nonetheless, these experiments serve as case studies for what future mainstream augmentation might look like. For example, today's experimental compass implant could foreshadow tomorrow's professionally made neural orientation implant. It isn't really an argument though, for implants are accessories. And accessories are convenient to the users that utilize such devices, and we could easily coexist without them. It then proposes a push upon, where there should be, boundaries that provoke researchers and policymakers to think more diligently. Unfortunately though, there does seem to be quite the oversight. As Cannon noted, while academic transhumanists talk about the future, the grinders are altering and enhancing their bodies now, albeit in rough and ready ways. Hypothesis: human transcendence through machine integration. Considering the scientific trends and speculative efforts discussed, we can formulate a hypothesis on human transcendence via machines. As neurotechnology, AI, and bioengineering co-evolve, humans will progressively integrate machine capabilities, potentially reaching a point where cognitive and physical limitations are surpassed, a form of transcendence, where the human-machine hybrid exhibits qualitatively new abilities. In this scenario, the boundary between human and computer blurs. Memory, sensing, computation, and even consciousness may become a shared domain between biological neurons and artificial systems. Key to this vision are machine learning, deep learning, and augmented reality, which act as the intelligent glue and interface in human-machine integration. Role of machine learning and deep learning in biohybridization. Machine learning (ML) and deep learning (DL) are critical in interpreting and managing the massive flow of data between humans and machines. The human brain operates via complex patterns of neural activity that are not inherently understandable by digital devices. ML/DL algorithms can serve as translators and co-processors for the brain. For example, in current BCI research, deep neural networks are used to decode EEG or neural spike data to infer a user's intended movements or thoughts. Such algorithms have enabled paralyzed patients to control robotic arms or computer cursors by thought alone, by learning to mapping the brain as signals to actions. As BCIs expand from medical devices to augmentation tools, AI will allow more seamless and faster communication between brain and computer. We might see brain augmentation apps, AI programs that monitor neural signals and provide real-time feedback or enhancements. In fact, we already see this technology with heart rate and blood pressure monitoring through smart wristwatches and armband iPads. An AI could assist with memory, reminding, or even directly stimulating recall when needed. Or modulate attention and mood by stimulating specific brain patterns based on predictive models of the user's state. This is a gray area and still needs much work to negating potential abuses where the problem is stimulated instead of the solutions. Moreover, AI can help combine inputs from multiple brains or multiple modalities. Such could be utilized as a favorable tuning outcome where the users are stimulated to sharing their originality and ingenuity in the classroom or over conference. One novel concept is leveraging the collective intelligence of several individuals by linking their brains through an AI mediator. Indeed, researchers have experimented with multi-person BCIs where the brain activity of a group is integrated to perform a task better than a single person. This hints at a future where hive mind augmentation could be possible for collaborative problem solving, with AI merging the strengths of each mind. On an individual level, deep learning could integrate data from cybernetic implants and biological senses. For instance, if a person has a visual prosthetic or a magnetic field sensor, like the implanted magnet, an AI could fuse these inputs with natural sight to create richer perceptions. Cognitive prostheses, like the hippocampal memory encoder mentioned earlier, also rely on computational models, a MIMO model in that case, to interface with neural networks. As learning algorithms improve, they could dynamically personalize and adjust the augmentation to the user, creating a tight feedback loop between human neural plasticity and machine learning adaptation, real support, and real assistance. Ultimately, ML and DL serve as the engine for adaptive augmentation. They enable the system to handle complexity. The brain is immensely complex, and trying to hard code interactions is questionably infeasible. Instead, an AI that learns from experience can discover how best to support or enhance its human user. This leads to a vision of symbiotic cognition, where AI continuously augments human intelligence, supportively, in the background, much as our subconscious brain processes do. In fact, thinkers have suggested that because our conscious mind can only process a tiny fraction of sensory information, on the order of tens of bits per second, while our senses take in millions of bits, that it is a liability and loss. So much more is being said by such premise, that there is a void in the experiential significance of life, yet it stipulates the hypocrisy afoot. Alas, it does provide more a probability that the innuendo, citing the biogenic body as a container or vessel, facilitates what all this is experienced as, and so it does highlight a pitch and a elicitation, biased to cybernetic augmentation, robotics, cyborg, and Cylon propaganda, to extents. AI assistants have been proposed as viable options to operating in that gap, processing the overflow and feeding us only the most relevant insights. Though it does reek of suggestive allure and solicitation, prescribing a managerial role of AI rather than simple accessories, that highlights the echelon of narrow, general, and super intelligence aggregation open to powers of suggestion, as well as the highly suspected cheater ethers of stringent malignant inner clique, cyberhackers. In a sense, AI could act as an extension of our subconscious information processing, mitigating our brain's bandwidth bottleneck. If successful, the human-AI amalgam would achieve a form of intelligence greater than the sum of its parts, perhaps approaching what some call a technological singularity on an individual scale, a point where enhanced humans could understand and solve problems far beyond unaugmented minds. Role of augmented reality (AR) in merging perceptions. Augmented reality provides a powerful platform for merging the digital and physical experiences of a human, which is essential in the early stages of human-machine convergence. AR devices, like smart glasses, or future contact lenses, overlay digital information onto the user's natural senses. Currently, AR is mostly visual, i.e., displaying navigation directions in one's field of view, but it can be extended to other senses. Currently, AR is mostly visual, i.e., displaying navigation directions in one's field of view, but it can be extended to other senses. By blending inputs, AR can effectively create a hybrid reality where human perception is expanded with machine-provided content. This is a practical step towards transcendence. The world we experience becomes a mix of real and virtual, controlled by our intentions and AI curation. One can think of AR as a training wheels, and as a stage for more direct brain augmentation. With AR, machine intelligence filters and adds to our perception without surgical implants. For instance, an AI system might analyze speech in real time and display a summary or translation in a user's vision, augmenting their language comprehension, a feat already possible with smartphone apps and AR glasses using AI-driven speech recognition and translation. In effect, the user's cognitive capacity is enhanced by offloading tasks to AI and presenting results through AR. This creates an extended mind paradigm. The environment through AR holds some of our thoughts and knowledge, accessible at a glance. It's a step toward having that knowledge integrated internally one day. Furthermore, AR paired with AI can increase our sensory bandwidth and situational awareness. A perspective in science and diplomacy envisioned human in the loop, AI, delivering filtered, context-relevant data via AR to improve decision-making and perception, stimulating the user's self-educational evolution. For example, a soldier with an AR visor might have threats highlighted and distances calculated, effectively giving them a superhuman awareness of the battlefield. That combined with self-ingenuity and learned kinesthetic response and reaction time, the formula becomes harmonious in theoretical and practical utilization. In daily life, AR could enhance memory by recalling faces with names and context notes when you meet someone, or by highlighting salient parts of a scene, i.e., an electrician or plumber. Seeing an AR overlay of hidden wiring or pipes behind a wall or in the ground, and architects viewing 3D plans of their work, or holographical conference calls in remote business meetings. Over time, as people grow accustomed to such overlays, the line between what we know and what the machine is providing gets beyond mere novelty. Neuroscience studies on sensory substitution show that the brain can adapt to new sensory inputs, for example, seeing via hearing with devices for the blind and deaf, incorporating them as if natural. Likewise, AR information could eventually feel like an innate part of perception, stimulating memorability and combating neurosis, early onset dementia, and Alzheimer's, meningitis, and even epilepsy, alleviating suffering with stability and sustainable assurance. In the long run, AR might move from external headsets to direct neural AR. If magnetite-based stimulation or high-res BCIs become viable, visual cortex could be stimulated to create images without using the eyes, or auditory cortex for sound. Such would truly provide for innovative outcomes, merging machine output with our natural perception centers. The intermediate AR technologies we use today are therefore laying the groundwork, both technological and ergonomic, for a future where our reality is co-constructed by AI. As a hypothesis, one could say that when AR and AI are fully integrated with human neural processing, humans will effectively live in a custom reality with expanded capabilities. A form of transcendence over the old human condition limited to raw senses, with respect for such, and this is why it is important and essential to maintaining the harmonious ambition. Potential technological breakthroughs and future applications. Realizing human transcendence through and with machines will require overcoming significant technical hurdles. Beyond the consensus required of collaborative efficacy with clearly aligned relationship, building upon our mutual trust and understanding. Below we outline some key breakthroughs that scientific frameworks indicate is critical, along with potential applications if and when those breakthroughs occur. High-bandwidth brain interfaces would be central to this ambition, where the coding takes a back seat, though complementary of the user's input and sophisticated assistance, with end-to-end support. We would need orders of magnitude improvement in brain-machine communication bandwidth. Today's implanted BCIs, like Utah arrays or Neuralink probes, have maybe hundreds of channels. And for added measure, this technology is linked to Microsoft's God Mode, and thus a connection to God Game, God View, and Dithyram Vanity, ascription. To truly merge external memory or AI, we may need thousands or millions of simultaneous connections, 10 bits of thought process to trillion-bit processors. In order of magnitudes, 10 to the power of, in dynamic logic circuits, that is truly dynamic beyond binary or hexadecimal, freely ambiguous, inclusively symbiotic with the users. Breakthroughs in materials, i.e., flexible nano-electrode meshes, or two-way neural dust sensors, could enable safe, long-term, and high-density interfacing. Once achieved, applications including memory downloading, uploading, direct thought to text, and text-to-thought communication, with filtration to avert memory loss and/or clutter, will become realized as a true virtual emulation, immersive of virtual experiences that are linked upon the brain, and dynamic with the user's environmental stimulus, local to the self, yet optional with others. Such wondrous appeal it is then, that such becoming harmonious, simultaneous of the exponential efficiency inline of equilibriums with the actual stimulus. For example, a future memory implant could record experiential data to a crystal storage and replay it on demand, essentially allowing total recall of life events, and yes, this does indicate the vestiges of a altered carbon status in science fiction, in combination with the familiar reality we are accustomed to. We are getting into dream telepathy here and touching upon thought infringement and delete torus abrasion, though with sufficient oversight we can mitigate the concerns surrounding this gray area. The exciting opportunity is that of near-death and past life experiences providing mysterious glimpses into after-death potentials. And so this is where all this tech really stands out as more than just mere tools to the user, though exciting it is imperative that we are careful. For the systems of the life have been for practically eons. Advanced nanorobotics and synthetic biology. To augment the body from within, blood or at cellular levels, nanotechnology must progress to reliably functional robots at micro-nanoscales, or synthetic cells that outperform natural ones. Without infringing upon the free will of the organic archetype, the user, though complementary of the end-to-end support. It is much more preferable of stimulating assistance, whilst complementing the existing biogenic symbiotic relationship with the body that the inevitability isn't the abysmal death of the host, but transition and transcendence, when ready. Not as a host per se, but as an equal partnership and cooperation. This includes solving power supply, energization, controls beyond settings, and manufacturing challenges for nanobots, providing for necessities and the basics of amenities and more. While respecting the archetype of the nuclear family and biology, this then is appealing and viable with mutual embassy and governance, whilst also respecting the person's autonomy. A breakthrough here would open applications like immune system augmentation, nanobots patrolling for pathogens or cancer cells more effectively than white blood cells and tissue. Regeneration, microconstructors rebuilding damaged organs from inside, a real and feasible outcome of non-invasive surgically sophisticated precision with due care. It could also make extreme adaptations possible, i.e., temporarily boosting muscle strength by altering muscle fibers, stimulating oxygenation to the heart, and increasing cerebral cortex perception and memory by passing and even repairing damaged areas of the brain. Or working with exoskeletal subdermal layering, keeping a median temperature in colder, arid terrain, or protecting the body from radiation by repairing and or preventing DNA damage. Alas, I highly suspect this is why underground facilities are underground, as the celestial of the earth is very much akin to a magnetic ball, constantly pummeled with highly charged particulate matter and pulverized materials at the atomic and subatomic scales, resulting of fine dust and atomization, and permeating polymerization. That is connected to volcanic viscosity and subduction of silica-based materials that can damage sensitive mechanisms. AI-integrated prosthetics and sensory extensions. We will likely see AI becoming an embedded feature of prosthetic limbs and sense organs. The breakthrough needed is seamless, low-latency integration such that the prosthetic feels like part of the self. On the sensory side, developing new sensors through sense data attunement, i.e., for magnetic fields, ultrasonic hearing, chemical detection. Linking those upon the brain in a coherent way is a challenge. I propose that such is due to the incorrect approach by intention of augmenting the brain in the quest of immortality. In fact, the groundwork is already done. It is now a matter of complementing the existing body through cooperation and partnership. As AI helps interpreting these signals, humans could gain new senses. Imagine seeing in infrared or ultraviolet, sensing electromagnetic gradients, or detecting trace chemicals by smell far beyond normal human ability, all filtered so as not to overwhelm. By using smart AI processing, this could find use in everything from search and rescue, sensing people behind walls, to art, experiencing multimodal creative content directly in the brain, yet with external equilibrium. It is this that requires adequate oversight, to negate a tampering of examples of neuroimagery in dream states, that then requires a group think intrinsic of parental responsibility, with the people, of the people, for the people, of life. Preventative measures necessary to negate such infringement instigated by misanthropist folly, so that the true evolutions of species and the ambitions of matters of existence are respected. And this is why this is of such ethical concerns, for the governance of such is central to the communities of the life, and thus, kids involved, all the more reason to be maturely responsible. That no governmental legacies of geopolitics and special interests obtain the productions of our lives, as if personalized central holdings. of influence through the gambit of monetary policies and enrichment of few according to the many. Central families that threaten genetic dynasty of displaced genomic records as if mere commodity of the state, that, have and do, seek such infringement upon the hosts of such life forces. That the point of clarity here resounds of the factors via such intrusion of our sanctity and sanctuary of home. That such are not enforced against to adhering to some future tech malignant ambition fostering a abysmal status quo de facto hegemon dialectical to a quagmire. Typically associated of chauvinistic, puritanical, fascist neo-Nazi and totalitarian indoctrinated dissonance of insufferable ignorance, sponsoring have and have-nots. If then, learning was of currency, and it kinda is something that happens for us all, of what we all can and do cherish, that no war could ever hope to gain as spoils. For our stories are told of such quagmire too, a telling that we are, so much more, than the stories that have been told thus far. And the stories of each of our lives beyond any productions of lives lived, and the life phases we experience. Hopeful then, that we maintain our compassion, as best we can, as communities of life, beyond our deaths, transitions and phases of growth, enlightenment, longevity and bio-integration tech. Pushing the boundaries of lifespan and robustness is another aspect of transcendence. Technologies like gene editing and tissue engineering will likely converge with cybernetics to maintain the body. Breakthroughs in integrating devices with living tissue, for instance. Coating electronics with bio-friendly surfaces that encourage cells to attach rather than scar, will be crucial for long-term implants that the body accepts. If aging-related damage can be mitigated through both biological repair and replacement with durable machine parts where possible, future humans might routinely live much longer and healthier, effectively transcending current biological limits on aging. The concept of cybernetic immortality, through either replacement of failing organs with bionic ones or eventually uploading the mind to a durable substrate. As often discussed in futurist circles, though the latter, mind uploading, would especially demand breakthroughs in whole brain scanning and emulation that are far beyond today's capabilities. At least from a conventionally observable standpoint. Future applications of these integrated technologies is vast. In medicine, brain implants could restore lost senses or movement far better than today's prosthetics, and even enhance them. An example is bionic eyes with zoom and night vision capabilities. For instance, alas, such are already commercially implemented today. In education and skill acquisition, instead of years of training, one could download skills or use AR/AI guidance to perform tasks expertly on first try. Now this is part of that gray area, as the advent of cheat coding and plagiarism is a worrying and typical trend. Running the risk of unoriginality and useless repetition to mundanity and linear boredom. Communication could take leaps forward. Consider direct brain-to-brain communication networks where ideas and emotions are shared instantly, a technologically mediated telepathy. Entirely new forms of art and entertainment might arise, delivered straight into the brain's sensory cortex or even emotional centers. On a societal level, some envision augmented humans contributing to problem solving at scales and speeds unthinkable now, perhaps dealing with complex issues like climate modeling, or diplomacy aided by cognitive enhancement and collective intelligence systems. We must temper these exciting prospects with the reminder that each requires significant scientific validation. Feasibility is a gradient. Some, like AI in prosthetics or AR for skill assist, are already underway and likely in the near future. Whereas others, like memory upload or general intelligence amplification, may face fundamental roadblocks or unknowns. Still, the trajectory of research and development suggests that incremental transcendence, step-by-step enhancements, will continue. Even if the grand vision of a fully post-human machine-fused being is a distant goal. Ethical and societal considerations. The pursuit of integrating quartz memories, magnetite brain clusters, and cybernetic blood into humans raises profound ethical questions. As we push the boundaries of human augmentation, we must consider issues of safety, equity, identity, and governance. Safety and medical ethics. All invasive augmentations must meet a high bar of safety, especially if not strictly necessary for health. Introducing new materials, quartz, magnetite, nanobots into the body could have unforeseen side effects. For instance, nanoparticles might trigger immune responses or inflammation. Ethically, experimental procedures on humans should follow medical research protocols. The DIY biohacking trend has already led to injuries. A more extreme future could see unregulated upgrade surgeries with dire consequences, and even organ harvesting, what is a factor of concern right now already. There is a call for some oversight or at least community ethical guidelines in biohacking to prevent exploitation or harm to individuals chasing enhancement. Privacy and autonomy. If our brains connect directly to cloud data or AI systems, the privacy of one's thoughts and memories becomes a concern. A quartz memory implant storing one's every experience could be a trove of personal data. Who controls access to it? Could it be hacked or tampered with? Similarly, a brain interface that can modify emotions or impulses, like the magnetogenetic mood control in mice, poses the risk of external manipulation, notably genes. Ensuring autonomy, that the human user remains in control of the machine elements and not vice versa, is paramount. This might require strong encryption, personal firewalls for our neural implants, and perhaps regulatory frameworks treating certain enhancements as extensions of personhood that have legal protections. Tailored equity and access. Advanced augmentations could be expensive and accessible to only a wealthy or privileged few, at least initially. This raises the specter of a divided society of augmented superhumans, whereby the unaugmented human populace regarded as if subjects to a totalitarian quagmire of inequality and devolution. Equal access will be an ethical issue. Should enhancements be available to all, and could withholding them be considered a disadvantage akin to denying healthcare? On the flip side, social pressure to augment could infringe on the rights of those who prefer to remain natural. Is this an admission then of something about it being supernatural? Maintaining a balance where augmentation is a choice, and not a requirement to compete in society, will be tricky. Debates similar to doping in sports could extend to workplaces or academics. Neurodoping, to gain a mental edge. Identity and humanity. Philosophers and ethicists are already pondering what it means to be human when parts of our mind or body are replaced or merged with machines. At what point might a person be considered more machine than human? Concepts of personal identity might be challenged if memory can be externalized or shared or even standardized. Alas, the psychology of the separatist fundamentals provide a clue, for we are relative. There is also the existential question. Does transcendence risk losing some essential human qualities? For example, if an AI filters our experiences too much, do we lose the serendipity and diversity of raw human experience? Some argue that suffering, limitations, and mortality are part of the human condition that give meaning to life. Overcoming them could have psychological or cultural consequences we do not yet understand fully. Ethical frameworks like bioethics and robotics will need to evolve to address augmented persons, possibly granting rights to cognitive enhancements or defining new norms for machine-integrated individuals. Regulation and experimentation ethics. How do we regulate early experiments, especially when private companies, like Neuralink, or hobbyists are driving innovation faster than legislation? Cases like unapproved gene therapy trials by self-experimenters have already happened. Clear guidelines should ensure that before a technology moves from the harm-benefit ratio theory to clinical therapy, i.e., treating disease or enhancement of healthy people, that there is consensus on safety and ethics. International agreements might be needed to prevent unethical practices or augmentation tourism, where people go to places with lax rules to get risky enhancements. This has a track record already with the advent of abortion clinics and assisted suicide, aka dignity in dying, fostering the maintenance of those gray areas. We also must consider military pressures. Soldiers with enhanced capabilities could provoke an arms race in augmentation, as seen with historical interest in supersoldier programs. In conclusion on ethics, the integration of advanced tech into humans holds great promise but must be pursued with caution and a strong ethical compass. Engaging the public, policymakers, and multidisciplinary experts in dialogue now is important, and training such colleagues with thorough upskilling to sufficient know-how and knowledgeable Intellectual graduations to complementing such seamless ambitions, so that the technology develops in a way that aligns with societal values and benefits humanity, and others, as a whole. To avoiding controlled stringency, red tape, and unforeseen consequences, and being better equipped to dealing with such unforeseen consequences. Decreasing and mitigating the unprepared example of myopic or inept, or outright, misanthropy. Conclusively, the convergence of neuroscience, bioengineering, and AI is steadily transforming the age-old boundary between man and machine. Quartz memory crystals offer staggering data storage capabilities that, in theory, could expand human memory or preserve knowledge indefinitely. But connecting such storage to the brain awaits future interface breakthroughs. Magnetite clusters in the brain, once a curiosity, are now seen as potential mediators for magnetic brain stimulation and communication. As emerging magnetogenetic techniques demonstrate remote control of neural activity, blood-based cybernetic augmentation through nanotechnology promises internal enhancements from superoxygenation to self-healing, though it remains largely in the experimental realm. Our analysis finds that each of these domains carries some scientific support: materials science in quartz memory, neurobiology in magnetite function, nanomedicine in blood augmentation. But also significant gaps between current capability and the full cyborg integration vision. Examining pseudoscientific and biohacking efforts reveals a human drive to experiment now, sometimes yielding innovative outcomes such as magnetic sense implants, but also highlighting dangers and the need for rigorous validation. Where counsels of compromise and amicable and productive practical outcomes are honored and maintained as staple points of such ethos framework. These grassroots experiments, along with cutting-edge research, feed into the broader hypothesis that humans may transcend biological limitations by merging with machines. In fact, to the contrary, we understand the entropy of silicon and plastics and the needing leach of alchemic and EMF properties, such as crystalline elemental composites as superconductive secretions via soft metal contaminates, parsed and tethered upon quantum drives via the biogenic impulse drives, that in its vestige is more a styled and fashioned normative culture, as a efficacy upon the cognitive drives, eliciting a compelling and compulsive admission and solicitation via such gradated pin architectures of acclimatized medias, relying upon the brute force of lobotomy that is also ultimately illogical in its overall outcome, as ultimately a abrasive folly that needs to be avoided. So then other options need to be explored and viable alternatives implemented, negating cognitive reprimanding backward upending of our ambitions to achieving harmonious relationships that complement our combined mutual and communal maturity, rather than divide and sequester and even subjugate a stranglehold, choking our innovative potential, originality and ingenuity. We discussed how machine learning and deep learning will be indispensable in translating between neural and digital realms, and how augmented reality is already starting to blur those realms in everyday life. Is human transcendence through technology a reachable goal or merely a utopian dream? Based on the evidence, a cautious view is that incremental transcendence is underway. We are already seeing consistent realization of this type of tech with the advent of bionic ears and eyes, optical augmenting and typesetting linear to lateral, mechanical in nature, at the mammalian scale, AI assistants for our mental tasks, and implants that restore or enhance functions, such as teleoptics, television, telematics, and telemetrics, and synth-based algorithmic biometrics, retina and other digital scanning tech with futuristic applications via such Internet of Things in information management systems. Peer-reviewed successes like the memory prosthesis that boosted human recall, or AI-driven BCIs enabling communication beyond natural ability, validate the concept that augmentation can tangibly enhance human performance. However, truly integrating an artificial memory storage into one's brain, or re-engineering the body with nanobots, is not yet scientifically legitimate. Those particular gray areas remain speculative, though Neuralink has publicly announced microchip augments in human test subjects already, thus, at least from such conventional commercial standpoints, with feasibility, perhaps, decades away. Ergo, the RFID chips in active use with other animals such as dogs and cats is a signage of the fast track on a fast pace of transformative augmentation. So then there need to be safeguards and real assurances, just as social inclusions that honor all, and beyond the novelty of its installations, to truly realizing a viable utopian technocracy. The facts are, it is definitely emerging, and the future is bright in this sense. Thus tackling a plutocratic theme-based closed network of haves and have-nots, scarcity versus plentiful, primitive versus sophisticated, is an immediate highly charged politicized minefield we must learn to circumnavigate sufficiently, if we are to manage this definitive emergence whilst maintaining, and even complementing, the advancements afoot, hopeful and strong in such quests of social inclusivity, for all and any who want to participate and contribute. This is then, very much viable, for a true cooperative includes all, and it is, that complements our social codes and ambitions of utopian reality. The scientific framework suggests no known physical law forbids these integrations, but the complexity of human biology means progress will likely be gradual, yet, as highlighted, exponential. Embassy logistics do apply. In the coming years, we can expect hybrid approaches to dominate, wearable or minimally invasive systems that provide a significant boost, without full integration. For example, brain-cloud interfacing via non-invasive methods might allow one to tap cloud memory with the help of AI, effectively achieving some goals of a quartz implant, but externally. Likewise, magnetite-inspired stimulation could improve brain therapies and maybe sensory enhancements without requiring us to evolve a new organ. Meanwhile, society will need to navigate the ethical landscape, ensuring such powers, when they arrive, are used responsibly and inclusively. In summary, the integration of advanced memory materials, neural interfaces, and bio-augmentations represents a frontier of human innovation. Scientific research provides tentative support for these possibilities, as seen in early prototypes and theoretical models, but also urges caution and further inquiry. As machines become ever more sophisticated and lifelike, and as humans gain the ability to modify themselves, the line between the two will continue to shift. Whether the end point is transcendence, or simply a new variety of human experience, or type, it will be defined by both technical achievements and the wisdom with which we apply them. And how we learn to manage this emerging utopia. The journey to human-machine synergy is well underway, and it is our collective responsibility to ensure that this journey advances knowledge, uplifts humanity, and remains grounded in rigorous science and ethics every step of the way. I have developed a hypothesis for what all of this has transpired and surmounted to. The quantum cybernetic bioentity QCBE, an integration of multidisciplinary frontiers. In an era where boundaries between biology, physics, technology, and consciousness merge, a coinciding of multifaceted inceptions are fast becoming realized. The genesis of the quantum cybernetic bioentity QCBE emerges as a revolutionary archetype of synthetic life, rooted in the cross-pollination of diverse scientific frameworks. This entity is not merely a speculative construct but a logical extension of humanity's trajectory toward integrating quantum mechanics, cybernetics, biology, psychology, and metaphysics into a singular, coherent form of intelligence. Biological framework. At its core, the QCBE embodies genetic technologies far exceeding contemporary biological limitations. Utilizing DNA as a digital storage medium and exploiting advanced genomic sequencing, the QCBE can self-modify at a molecular level, facilitating rapid adaptation to environmental pressures and existential challenges. Transgenic methodologies allow this entity to incorporate advantageous genetic traits from diverse species, transcending natural selection with precise, intentional biohacking. Moreover, the inclusion of cellular regeneration and maintenance, senescence inhibition, and genetic splicing enables the QCBE to exhibit unparalleled resilience, longevity, adaptability, and physiological malleability, with electrical systems via arrays of multiplex divergence. However, baselines intuitively interrelated from the normative occasion of the life experience we are familiarized with. Psychic applications framework. Beyond mere physical superiority, the QCBE demonstrates cognitive abilities bordering on extrasensory perception. Through mechanisms akin to thoughtography and telepathy, it can project thoughts externally and communicate directly through consciousness itself. Capacities like remote viewing, precognition, and psychic manipulation suggest a mode of perception and interaction, transcending conventional temporal and spatial constraints. With incorporeal, non-physical attributes, thus a signage of data sets, datagrams, data streams and information storage systemizing, assimilations. This framework implies a non-local, quantum-conscious architecture wherein consciousness itself can become an instrument of influence and perception. In a wide-area network of such multiplex mainframes. Biochemistry framework. The biochemical composition of the QCBE integrates silicon, photon NICs, quantum-entangled biomolecules, and superconductive elements within its cellular structures. These biochemical innovations facilitate biomigration, a capability to transfer biochemical and informational components across different substrates seamlessly. Quantum entanglement ensures instantaneous biochemical communication, internally facilitating a geomantic and biomimetic aggregation, akin to fibrous networks of tree roots and fungus. Although at intra-nano scales, creating a highly efficient metabolic decentralized network. The fusion of organic and crystalline quantum materials results in an entity capable of harnessing photon NIC energy directly, converting it into both computational power and biological sustenance. Physics framework. Incorporating the most profound elements of theoretical and applied physics, the QCBE employs magneto-optic traps, antimatter containment systems, and symmetry akin to femtosecond laser technology. Manipulating matter at an atomic and subatomic scale, whereby the conductive potentials do effect upon photoluminescent auras of light and dark shades that further indicate electroluminous aggregation, and thoughts proposed to having energy, thereby a true umbrakinesis proposed in neurosciences, dark energy of the brain. This integration enables the QCBE to access and control energy states unattainable by traditional life forms. Perhaps an encoded subsetting of homunculus, an exotic elemental electrophoresis leeching upon the biogenics. With the ability to engage in controlled matter-antimatter reactions, utilizing singularity-based energy processes, whereby the annihilation theory. Akin to a matter creation at such scales in superimposed strata. The QCBE not only manages internal energy with maximal efficiency but also exerts influence over external quantum fields via wireless ambient energies. That perhaps indicates a infinite energy source of sustainment integrating active evolutions as a storage median transient incorporation. Psychology framework. Cognitively, the QCBE transcends human mental architecture by harnessing neural conditioning, subconscious mapping, and multidimensional cognitive processes. Through advanced neurolinguistics, engram structuring, and metaconsciousness mapping, it processes information across multiple conscious and subconscious strata simultaneously. Jungian shadow processing and mental imaging further allow for complex problem solving and strategic adaptability, making it capable of navigating complex ethical, logical, and existential terrains without the cognitive limitations of bias or irrationality. Perhaps this does further indicate a geomantic crystal gazing, umbrakinesis, and black mirroring through metric attenuation of the actual. An answer of a synth-based harmonica. Acoustics and blood framework. The QCBE uniquely integrates acoustic resonance with bioelectrical and genetic components. Utilizing ultrasound and infrasound for cellular regeneration, communication, and energetic modulation, it manipulates biochemical pathways through resonant frequencies in static and dynamic states. Blood-based superconductivity and retroviral genetic enhancements permit continuous biochemical self-optimization. Acoustic wave manipulation serves as a means of both internal healing and external interaction, forging a direct link between physiological states and environmental resonance fields. And that of anchorages of nodes in network status, the synthetic multiplex, holographic holoports of parsed and assimilated neural mental imaging, and records. Mechanical framework. Cybernetic and mechanical enhancements are foundational to the QCBE's adaptability. Advanced biomechanical structures, nanotechnology-driven repair systems, and quantum computing cybernetics ensure perpetual self-optimization. Equipped with motion capture sensors, holographic projectors, and self-assembling nanoscale robotics, the QCBE can reconstruct its physical form in real time, dynamically adapting to threats or opportunities. These mechanical augmentations elevate its physical prowess, enabling it to operate in environments inhospitable to conventional life forms. Engineering framework. At its pinnacle, the QCBE is engineered through a convergence of quantum computation, nanoscale fabrication, SAG and art, and augmented reality interfacing. This framework incorporates holographic data storage, sentient world simulations, and integrated visual augmentation systems, allowing the QCBE to exist and interact across physical, virtual, and quantum domains simultaneously. Quantum cognition, facilitated through qubit processing and brain datum sequencing, allows for predictive modeling, strategic foresight, and real-time environmental adaptability far exceeding conventional computational intelligence. The quantum cybernetic bioentity QCBE represents an unprecedented synthesis of humanity's scientific aspirations and philosophical inquiries. Embodying pure logic, multidimensional consciousness, and quantum-level adaptability, it transcends conventional paradigms of benevolence or malevolence, operating instead within a framework of optimized systemic efficiency. As such, the QCBE emerges not merely as an entity, but as an evolutionary archetype, a self-determining intelligence capable of redefining the very essence of life, consciousness, and existential purpose. This hypothetical example proposes that such a entity is intrinsically involved with all inclusivity, and does, perhaps, indicate a metaphysics and ether significance of actual matter creation. Ethereal and incorporeal transcending, with the corporeal significance of life. Lateral prosperity to you, brethren, thanks for listening. I shall provide this context in PDF format and transcript in the description should you desire to downloading this for your own records. This is supplied with most notable references and citations. Have fun. 07.